I am Veronica, a data analyst who had sacrificed years of my youth funding the extravagant lifestyle of my ungrateful relatives. My mother glared at me with pure disdain before delivering her absolute favorite insult to completely shatter my confidence. It was the 12th time my mother had mocked me like this. "You are just a fat and failed person." Her cruel voice echoed loudly across the crowded room. My father immediately chimed in with a look of utter disgust to tell me I should look at my sister, who has 1 million followers on TikTok plus over 1 million on Instagram. The bitter irony of their vicious words was that the person they relentlessly labeled as a worthless failure was the exact same person working tirelessly to cover their ridiculous living expenses. I refused to endure another second of this unjustified humiliation from the very people who relied entirely on my bank account for their daily survival. I picked up my phone without a single ounce of hesitation to instruct my bank manager to completely cancel the $6,000 monthly automatic transfer. They truly believed they held all the power until a 59-second video I posted a few days later completely destroyed their carefully constructed reality. That single upload forced their beloved house to be put up for sale, while permanently wiping out my sister's entire social media existence. Every seemingly perfect family has dark secrets desperately hidden behind closed doors waiting to be exposed. If you want to know exactly how I systematically dismantled their perfectly curated illusion, the atmosphere inside our family home was always distinctly divided into two completely opposite worlds. Our sprawling residence, located near a serene lake in Minneapolis, Minnesota, perfectly masked the deeply unfair dynamic functioning silently behind its expensive wooden doors. I am 26 years old, working entirely remotely as a senior data analyst, dealing with complex databases for various corporate clients. My demanding career provided a highly substantial income that kept this household afloat, but sitting for long hours exacerbated my severe metabolic disorder. This frustrating medical condition caused uncontrollable weight gain, making my physical appearance a constant source of unspoken shame for the people living comfortably under the same roof. While I spent countless hours staring at spreadsheets to ensure our bills were paid on time, the rest of the house focused entirely on superficial appearances. My sister Sydney is 28 years old, living a completely different reality, dictated entirely by camera lenses and social media metrics. She spent her days meticulously curating a fake lifestyle filled with expensive designer clothes and perfectly angled selfies designed to project ultimate success to complete strangers. Her incredibly empty virtual existence was heavily subsidized by my hard-earned money while being constantly praised by the two people who should have guided her better. Sydney never bothered to hold a traditional job because she firmly claimed her growing online brand required her absolute full attention from morning until midnight. She treated the entire house as her personal production studio, demanding absolute silence from everyone whenever her expensive smartphone camera started recording. My mother, Sharon, and my father, Paul, actively enabled this delusional behavior without expressing a single ounce of concern for the massive financial toll it took on my checking account. My parents constantly displayed blatant annoyance whenever I dared to step out of my secluded home office to grab a simple glass of water from the kitchen. One typical afternoon perfectly summarized their collective attitude towards my existence in the house I practically financed. I walked into the sunlit main living room, hoping to briefly rest my eyes from the glaring computer monitors after finishing a grueling project. My mother immediately waved her hands frantically in the air to stop my movement before I could even take another step forward onto the expensive rug. "You need to walk back into the hallway right now because your massive shadow is ruining the natural lighting for the skincare tutorial." My mother snapped harshly while aggressively pointing toward the narrow exit. Sydney did not even bother to look up from her phone screen as she adjusted her flawless makeup in the ring light reflection. "Seriously, just stay in your room until I finish filming this sponsored segment because the brands do not want an ugly, messy background," Sydney complained with a highly irritated tone. My father simply nodded in quiet agreement while carefully repositioning the tall silver tripods I had purchased for their makeshift studio just last month. He casually told me to be much more considerate of the highly important career path his eldest daughter was diligently trying to build for herself. They genuinely viewed my physical presence as an inconvenient eyesore disrupting their collective pursuit of internet fame and superficial validation. I retreated to my dark office without uttering a single word of protest while listening to their cheerful voices immediately resume recording the video as if I never existed. The glaring inequality was permanently woven into the fabric of our daily routines, making me feel like a tolerated tenant rather than a beloved family member. People observing from the outside might genuinely wonder why I chose to remain in such an obviously toxic environment while quietly funding their ridiculously extravagant lifestyle. The painful truth stemmed from years of deep psychological manipulation, conditioning me to firmly believe I inherently owed them compensation for my physical imperfections. I held on to the desperate illusion that my constant financial sacrifices would eventually earn me their genuine affection, or at least basic human respect. They expertly weaponized my deep insecurities, making me feel incredibly lucky they even allowed me to reside in the same beautiful lake house. I mistakenly equated providing endless financial support with securing a permanent place in their hearts, despite the overwhelming daily evidence constantly proving the exact opposite. Every single paycheck I handed over was merely a silent, desperate plea for a motherly or fatherly love they were never genuinely willing to give me. That particular Friday evening, a sudden internet network failure at our house accidentally opened a truly terrible Pandora's box. Sydney was right in the middle of a highly sponsored live broadcast when the entire wireless connection abruptly dropped without any prior warning. She practically sprinted down the hallway screaming frantically about losing thousands of active viewers during her absolute peak engagement hour. She slammed her expensive silver laptop down onto the glass dining table with enough aggressive force to make the heavy wood violently vibrate. She immediately ordered me to drop my own crucial data analysis work to restore the broken connection before her lucrative brand deal was completely ruined by the sudden outage. Her voice was dripping with absolute entitlement as she forcefully demanded that I fix the complex router issue within the next 2 minutes. I silently left my secluded office to investigate the primary network switch located right behind her carelessly discarded computer screen. The glowing indicator lights on the plastic modem were blinking erratically, signaling a massive data overload rather than a simple hardware malfunction. While I was expertly reconfiguring the main diagnostic settings, my eyes inadvertently caught sight of several active browser tabs she had foolishly left open on the screen. The glowing display brightly showcased dozens of consecutive electronic payment receipts, processed through highly obscure international payment gateways. These suspicious financial transactions were occurring automatically in rapid succession for various foreign server hosting companies I had never encountered in my professional tech career. The sheer volume of these continuous financial transfers immediately triggered my analytical instincts, because legitimate influencer platforms absolutely do not operate through such shady but a highly systematic diversion of massive funds to completely unknown offshore entities. The digital footprints clearly indicated an ongoing automated purchasing system designed to artificially inflate social media metrics through illicit third-party vendors. I discreetly used my own secure smartphone to capture several clear photographs of those strange IP addresses before she could return to the dining room. I immediately dialed the personal number of my colleague Brenda, who specialized in advanced cybersecurity tracking at our corporate data firm. I desperately needed her professional expertise to quickly trace the exact origin of this massive, suspicious bandwidth consumption flowing through our residential network. Brenda, can you please run this specific diagnostic code snippet to see exactly where these bizarre IP addresses are originating from right now? I asked quickly into the receiver. These are entirely fake engagement websites selling artificial followers with automated phantom comments while continuously draining someone's credit card. Brenda replied firmly through the phone speaker. The terrifying confirmation from my trusted coworker prompted me to dig much deeper into the unsecured hidden storage folders completely visible on her desktop. My rapid keystrokes quickly bypassed her incredibly weak security password to reveal a massive digital archive filled with highly alarming financial PDF documents. My blood ran completely cold when I opened the first dozen files, discovering numerous online credit loan contracts carrying absolutely extortionate predatory interest rates. These were not standard bank loans, but highly aggressive digital lending agreements designed to permanently trap desperate borrowers in an endless cycle of compounding debt. The mounting financial figures displayed across the bright screen represented a catastrophic financial disaster, quietly brewing right inside our supposedly wealthy household. Every single page revealed a deeply disturbing pattern of reckless borrowing designed solely to fund her extravagant superficial lifestyle without any genuine intention of repayment. The most despicable truth was officially exposed when I carefully examined the specific personal details officially listed on those predatory lending applications. Sydney had secretly stolen the confidential Social Security numbers belonging to my parents to fraudulently secure tens of thousands of dollars in high-interest digital loans. She deliberately committed severe identity theft against her own family, just to purchase luxury designer clothing items to desperately maintain her flawless online facade. The incredibly perfect internet personality they all worshipped was entirely built on a highly unstable foundation of artificial engagement numbers funded by massive illegal financial fraud. I stood completely frozen in the silent dining room, finally realizing the breathtaking magnitude of the disastrous financial hole she had selfishly dug for this family. The devastating reality was that my parents were completely oblivious to the massive mountain of toxic debt currently destroying their financial future. The following morning, I walked straight into my father's home office, carrying an incredibly terrifying silence with me. My ultimate goal was to confront my parents directly using only my spoken words to clearly explain the massive financial disaster currently unfolding right under their oblivious noses. I rationally articulated how Sydney was continuously purchasing fake online engagement while actively securing fraudulent digital loans using their confidential personal information. I desperately tried to make them comprehend that her reckless superficial spending was rapidly pushing our entire family toward the terrifying brink of absolute financial ruin. I thought exposing the harsh truth about their compromised Social Security numbers would surely break through their thick wall of parental denial. I stood completely still by the heavy oak desk before fixing my gaze directly on my father's dismissive face. Dad, Sydney is actively dragging this entire family into a massive, inescapable debt hole using both of your personal credit cards, I stated with a firm, raspy voice. My father immediately scrunched his face into a deep frown while aggressively waving his hand to completely dismiss my grave financial warning. Do not exaggerate the situation because those are simply standard image investment costs for highly famous people. My father replied with incredible irritation. My mother immediately marched into the cluttered office to fiercely defend her eldest daughter against my entirely factual accusations. She loudly began making ridiculous excuses, claiming that building a lucrative personal brand always requires massive initial capital expenses. She firmly insisted that all those questionable digital transactions would soon become incredibly profitable once the major corporate sponsorships finally started paying out real dividends. They both completely refused to acknowledge the blatant identity theft I had just uncovered, because protecting her fragile ego was apparently much more important than securing their own retirement funds. It became painfully obvious that they preferred living inside a comfortable financial lie rather than facing the destructive reality of their favorite child. Sydney suddenly appeared from behind the slightly open wooden door, with perfectly timed artificial tears streaming down her carefully powdered cheeks. She completely ignored the actual financial evidence, while instantly shifting the entire blame onto my supposed malicious intentions toward her burgeoning career. How could you possibly fabricate such cruel lies about me just to ruin my morning? Sydney sobbed loudly while dramatically clutching her chest. Are you intentionally invading my personal privacy just to maliciously smear my flawless online reputation out of pure spite? She wailed with theatrical precision. Her incredibly manipulative performance instantly triggered my parents into protective mode, causing them to completely forget the severe credit card fraud I had just revealed. My parents immediately rushed to comfort her, while simultaneously turning their collective anger entirely toward my direction. Both my father and my mother loudly accused me of fabricating these elaborate stories, purely out of petty jealousy regarding her undeniable physical beauty. They explicitly stated that my own miserable, overweight existence made me desperately want to destroy the bright, shining light their beautiful child brought into this world. Watching them fiercely protect the exact person actively destroying their financial security was the most profoundly disappointing moment of my entire adult life. I stood there absorbing their vicious verbal attacks while finally realizing that every single effort to warn them was completely and utterly pointless. Their deep-seated delusion was permanently cemented into their minds, making it absolutely impossible for them to accept any ugly truth about their eldest daughter. I slowly turned around to exit the suffocating room, deciding right then to completely shut down my last remaining shred of hope for this deeply broken family. That weekend, the entire backyard garden overlooking the serene lake was magnificently decorated with expensive floral arrangements to celebrate the highly anticipated 1 million followers milestone. The lavish outdoor celebration was incredibly loud, being heavily populated by dozens of superficial socialite friends she had barely known for a single month. The deafening electronic music actively drowned out any meaningful conversation, forcing everyone to simply smile mindlessly for the constantly panning smartphone cameras recording their every single movement. Sydney was constantly holding her expensive smartphone high above her head while actively broadcasting a continuous live video stream to thousands of adoring virtual fans watching from their homes. She was desperately playing the sickeningly sweet sister role for the digital camera, while simultaneously ignoring my actual physical existence off the digital screen. The invited guests were cheerfully drinking expensive vintage champagne I had unwittingly paid for, while completely dismissing the person who actually funded the entire extravagant evening. Amidst the overwhelming chaotic noise, my mother forcefully demanded that I personally carry a massive, ridiculously expensive custom-tiered cake outside to the main patio area. She explicitly instructed me to carefully position the heavy dessert directly into the exact center of the gathering to create the absolutely perfect aesthetic frame for the ongoing broadcast. The recently polished outdoor wooden deck was incredibly slick, from the evening condensation making my unsteady footsteps remarkably dangerous as I cautiously navigated the crowded space. My uncomfortable shoes suddenly lost traction on the incredibly slippery surface, causing me to completely lose my physical balance right in front of the massive cheering crowd. The heavy tiered cake violently tumbled from my trembling hands, crashing loudly onto the hard wooden ground, instantly destroying her highly choreographed live broadcast in mere seconds. Sydney instantly dropped her fake, sweet, angelic online persona while staring at the completely ruined dessert, with absolute burning hatred flashing furiously in her eyes. She aggressively stomped toward my fallen figure while screaming wildly in front of all her stunned, superficial party guests who were still holding their expensive drinks. "You did this entirely on purpose to ruin my special night, didn't you?" Sydney screeched at the absolute top of her lungs with pure venom. "You clumsy fat cow, you are intentionally destroying my entire life right now." She she added while pointing her sharp manicured fingernail directly at my face. My mother immediately rushed through the silent crowd of shocked guests with her face twisted in absolute unbridled disgust toward my vulnerable prone body on the floor. "For the 12th time, you are just a fat and failed person," my mother hissed viciously loud enough for the entire captive audience to clearly hear her cruel insult. My father quickly stepped beside her to deliver the final crushing verbal blow to my already completely shattered self-esteem without a single shred of parental hesitation. "Look at your sister who has 1 million followers on TikTok plus over 1 million on Instagram." My father chimed in with a look of pure, utter contempt. My lifelong endless endurance for their toxic emotional abuse was completely and irreparably shattered in that exact humiliating moment under the bright patio lights. The sudden profound clarity washing over my mind completely eliminated any lingering feelings of familial guilt I had harbored for the past several years. I did not bother offering a single useless explanation to the angry crowd, nor did I allow a single tear to fall from my exhausted eyes, despite the stinging public embarrassment. I slowly picked myself up from the sticky frosted wooden floor, while silently turning my back on the entire judgmental crowd staring at my ruined clothes. I walked straight into the quiet, empty house, leaving their chaotic, superficial nightmare completely behind me forever, without uttering a single word of desperate apology. The crystal-clear realization that my own flesh-blood viewed me entirely as a worthless bank account finally severed the deep psychological chains binding me to their toxic world. I immediately went directly into my dark bedroom to begin meticulously plotting my permanent financial escape from this ungrateful family, later that very same night. 2 days after the ruined party, I informed my completely dismissive family about an urgent, distant corporate business trip requiring my immediate physical departure from the household. I carefully dedicated the remaining quiet afternoon hours to secretly packing my most essential clothing items alongside my highly sensitive work equipment into several large suitcases. I stealthily loaded my packed luggage into my waiting vehicle before driving directly toward a highly secure luxury apartment I had cleverly rented several weeks in advance. My absolute first priority upon arriving inside the unfamiliar building was digitally logging into my primary financial portals to permanently revoke their authorized access to every single checking account under my name. I meticulously changed every single online security password, preventing my parents from making any further unauthorized withdrawals from the vast funds I had painfully accumulated over the grueling years. After successfully settling my few belongings into the remarkably peaceful new living space, I confidently initiated the incredibly fateful telephone call to my primary banking institution. I spoke directly to the senior branch manager, explicitly demanding the immediate permanent cancellation of the $6,000 monthly automatic transfer previously sustaining my ungrateful relatives. The highly professional bank representative processed my strict financial directive without any hesitation, officially severing the massive monetary pipeline that had artificially kept their extravagant lifestyle completely afloat. The tremendous psychological weight pressing heavily upon my exhausted shoulders instantly vanished the exact moment the banking associate verbally confirmed the permanent termination of that massive, recurring transaction. This decisive financial action finally secured my absolute independence from their continuous emotional extortion tactics, marking the true beginning of my newly liberated life. Later that exact same evening, my mobile phone vibrated continuously on the new kitchen counter, displaying an incoming call from Sydney, who was clearly experiencing her first declined transaction. I slowly accepted the incoming call, fully expecting an immediate verbal assault, but was instead greeted by her incredibly sickening, fake sweet voice, dripping with absolute artificial desperation. "Hey, Mom has a broken credit card right now, so can you please transfer me a little money to quickly handle a pending bill?" Sydney asked with manufactured innocence. "I am no longer the automated teller machine for this ungrateful family, so you need to deal with your own financial disasters yourself." I replied with an ice-cold tone before permanently hanging up the receiver. Absolutely furious over facing such an unprecedented blunt rejection, Sydney immediately resorted to utilizing her massive digital platform to maliciously manipulate the actual reality of the entire situation. She hastily published a remarkably lengthy, tearful online manifesto completely distorting the undeniable truth about my sudden departure from the previously shared family residence. Her heavily fabricated public post viciously slandered my character, painting me as a highly selfish monster cruelly cutting off the basic financial livelihood of our supposedly loving, supportive parents. She desperately weaponized her remaining loyal audience, directing thousands of misinformed strangers to hurl vicious verbal insults toward my private social media accounts based entirely on her pathological lies. I firmly refused to remain a silent, passive victim to her incredibly toxic public defamation, deciding instantly to launch my final, devastating counterattack against her carefully constructed digital empire. I confidently uploaded a highly detailed response video lasting exactly 59 seconds containing absolutely undeniable, irrefutable evidence, directly contradicting her entire fictional online victim narrative. The brief digital upload explicitly exposed the raw analytical data proving her massive fake follower purchases, alongside undeniable screenshots of the highly predatory loan contracts bearing our parents' stolen identities. I strategically concluded the incredibly damning public broadcast by inserting completely unfiltered personal photographs revealing the actual, disgusting, trash-filled reality of her supposedly pristine, aesthetic bedroom. The overwhelming factual proof completely dismantled the incredibly fragile illusion she had spent countless years deceiving her gullible corporate sponsors into believing. The following morning, the undeniably exposed truth, spreading rapidly across the digital internet, created an absolutely massive, destructive tsunami within our actual physical reality. Thousands of incredibly furious comments from deeply deceived loyal followers completely flooded every single previously uploaded photograph on the fraudulent online profile belonging to Sydney. People were absolutely outraged upon discovering that the flawless aesthetic lifestyle they had blindly idolized was entirely funded by severe financial manipulation and massive identity theft. Numerous major corporate sponsors simultaneously issued immediate formal legal notices permanently terminating their lucrative advertising contracts, while aggressively demanding massive financial compensation for severe brand damage alongside a complete public apology. The carefully manufactured illusion of her incredible digital success rapidly disintegrated into an embarrassing public spectacle, completely visible for the entire judging world to actively witness. My personal mobile phone continuously vibrated with an endless barrage of incoming calls until I finally decided to answer the incredibly persistent ringing out of pure, sheer annoyance, hoping to end the constant digital harassment. Are you completely crazy for doing this because you just permanently ruined my entire career and my entire future? Sydney screamed with absolute, pure, desperate agony through the loud receiver. I simply brought the undeniable factual truth directly into the bright public light because you are the only person who actually ruined your own life. I replied with a completely calm demeanor before permanently blocking her number. Exactly 3 stressful days later, the aggressive credit card companies initiated a relentless barrage of demanding telephone calls, attempting to collect the massive fraudulent debts resulting from those terrible, high-interest digital loans. Sydney and my parents somehow managed to successfully track down the highly confidential location of my newly rented luxury apartment building despite my incredibly careful privacy precautions. The desperate trio aggressively stormed into the pristine marble lobby, attempting to cause a massive, chaotic public scene right in front of the highly startled concierge desk. I immediately descended through the secure glass elevator to personally confront the incredibly loud disturbance echoing throughout the otherwise perfectly peaceful residential entrance hall, to prevent them from causing any further unnecessary public humiliation. The sudden visible contrast between their previous arrogant superiority and their current pathetic desperation was incredibly striking as I slowly approached the crowded reception area. My mother instantly lunged forward with heavy dramatic tears streaming continuously down her incredibly pale face while desperately clinging tightly to my right arm. "Please just take down that horrible video and immediately pay off this massive debt because the bank is threatening to foreclose on our beloved house," my mother begged with a pathetic sobbing voice. I coldly brushed her trembling fingers completely off my jacket sleeve while taking a deliberate physical step backward to establish a firm, impenetrable personal boundary. I looked directly into their terrified eyes while explicitly reminding them about the incredibly cruel weight-related insults they had viciously thrown at me during that disastrous celebration party. I explicitly stated that a fat and failed person could not possibly afford to save their precious expensive real estate from a totally justified legal bank foreclosure. Their deeply shocked expressions clearly indicated they had never genuinely expected me to actually weaponize their own toxic verbal abuse against them in such a definitive, permanent manner. I firmly instructed the heavily armed building security guards to immediately physically expel the trespassing individuals from the private premises and to permanently ban them from ever returning under the strict threat of immediate police involvement. I silently watched the heavy glass lobby doors firmly close behind their retreating, defeated figures, finally concluding the absolute darkest chapter of my entire existence without feeling a single ounce of lingering familial regret. The following several weeks, the absolute devastating consequences of their continuous deception finally began completely wiping out whatever fragile pieces remained of their shattered lives. The massive global social media platforms officially issued permanent bans, completely deleting every single digital account belonging to Sydney for committing severe commercial fraud against their strict community guidelines. Without my incredibly generous monthly financial allowance, constantly replenishing their drained bank accounts, my parents completely lost their ability to pay the massive credit card debt generated by her extravagant spending habits, leaving them completely defenseless against the aggressive collection agencies calling their personal phones relentlessly every single day. The major national banking institution officially initiated immediate legal foreclosure proceedings, quickly placing a heavy metallic padlock on the front door of the expensive lakefront property that once represented their delusional family pride. The beautiful sprawling estate was quickly auctioned off to the absolute highest bidder, forcing my completely humbled relatives to frantically relocate their remaining sparse belongings into a remarkably cramped suburban apartment complex located extremely far away from the wealthy neighborhood they previously loved showing off to their fake friends. They are now entirely forced to endure the incredibly brutal daily consequences resulting directly from their blind parental indulgence and their deeply rooted reliance on a completely fabricated digital existence. I finally started living a genuinely free existence, dedicating my significant financial resources entirely toward healing my severe metabolic medical condition, alongside enjoying the wonderful fruits of my demanding corporate labor. I eventually hired a dedicated personal nutritionist and a wonderful specialized medical team to properly address my physical health, leading to a remarkably positive transformation over the next several months. My beautiful new reality is absolutely completely free from the suffocating psychological manipulation that previously poisoned my entire adulthood, making this drastic permanent separation the greatest personal victory of my entire life. Before we completely wrap up today's incredibly intense story, please do not quickly scroll away, because there are several crucial psychological lessons we must deeply analyze together right now. I strongly believe this particular narrative perfectly highlights the immense hidden dangers of sacrificing your own mental health to financially support deeply toxic family members. Society constantly pressures us to blindly forgive our blood relatives regardless of their terrible actions. But true familial love should never require you to accept continuous emotional abuse or severe financial exploitation, especially when that exploitation is continuously paired with incredibly cruel body-shaming insults meant to destroy your fragile self-esteem. The protagonist demonstrated incredible personal strength by recognizing her own inherent value completely separate from her physical appearance or her ability to function as an automated teller machine for her superficial parents. Enabling destructive behavior through endless financial bailouts actually prevents arrogant individuals from ever learning crucial life lessons about personal responsibility and the devastating legal consequences of committing intentional financial fraud. Now, I genuinely want to ask every single viewer currently watching this video a highly important moral question regarding the massive dramatic turning point in this complicated familial conflict. If you were unexpectedly placed in the exact same impossible position as the protagonist, would you possess the absolute courage to permanently cut off your own parents and post that devastating exposed video? Perhaps some of you might have chosen a slightly different approach involving professional legal mediation or strict conditional boundaries instead of executing such a definitive public destruction of an online career. If you currently hold a completely different perspective or a unique alternative strategy, please take a quick moment to share your valuable personal thoughts down in the comment section below this video. Thank you so incredibly much for dedicating your valuable time to listen to this entire